The story begins in the prison of the Silver Dragon dungeon guarded by two strong dragon guards. Suddenly, one of the guards noticed someone approaching. It was none other than the Silver Dragon Queen, Rosweise. She ordered the guards to leave. As she wished to speak with the prisoner alone, chained in the prison was the great dragon-slaying hero with a smirk on her face. She asked him how it felt to be a prisoner of the Dragon Clan. His reply was simple. "Kill me." Amused by his desire for a swift death, she approached him, touching his chin. She got little hesitant because it wasn't easy for her. He was both handsome and strong. She slowly traced her sharp nail across his face, making a small cut, saying, "Few more, and you will be perfect." He turned his head away, refusing to let her humiliate him any further. He said, "Kill me or chop me up as you like." He only hoped she'd be quicker about it. Despite his great power, he had been betrayed by a villain, leaving him in this miserable state. The Dragon Queen licked the blood from his wound and suggested he join the Silver Dragon clan. He mocked her, saying, "Are you worthy of having me as your ally?" Infuriated, she lashed out, whipping him with her tail. She slammed his body into the wall. Standing over him, she placed her foot on his chest, saying that a mere prisoner would dare insult her. This was no ordinary man. His name was Leon Cosmode. He was the greatest hero of mankind. Everyone used to praise him. His dreams of wiping out the Dragon Clan and leaving behind a legacy for future generations had crumbled. Rosweise sneered and asked him, "Are you going to die already?" "Wake up." She pressed her foot harder into his chest, reminding him that any chance of a future filled with wealth and glory had vanished. Without a successor, he would leave nothing behind. Leon warned her not to underestimate humans. With a swift motion, the Dragon Queen wrapped her tail around his neck, thinking how stubborn he was. As she tightened her grip, she asked if he was ready to beg for mercy. But Leon remained calm, revealing that she had made two critical mistakes from the very beginning. First, he said, "You should never have been alone with the most powerful dragon slayer. And second, you should never have tasted my blood." Suddenly, Leon activated a forbidden technique known as the blood curse. The Dragon Queen instantly released her hold on him, stepping back in shock. A strange sensation overwhelmed her. Anxious, she started feeling very hot and an uncontrollable lust taking over her body. She collapsed to her knees, trembling. Leon approached, his eyes cold and calculating. He mocked her by saying, "Your Majesty, you will live the rest of your life in pain, brought by the soul," and before she could think, she lunged at him, knocking him to the ground. Leon, taken aback, couldn't comprehend what was happening. The Dragon Queen, consumed by the curse, kissed him, causing him to blush. And for the next hour, they were in intense fight of life and death until one of them is down. Till then, what you can do is like and subscribe. Finally, the blood curse began to fade, and with it, her control over her body returned. She quickly pulled away, confusion and anger in her eyes. "What have you done to me?" she demanded. Leon calmly explained, "The blood curse is a forbidden technique that can only be used once in a lifetime. When you tasted my blood, it created a bond between our souls. Once I die, the curse will cause you endless suffering." The Dragon Queen scoffed, still trying to make sense of the situation. "If this curse takes effect after death, then why did this happen?" she asked, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Leon frowned. It seemed the curse had an unexpected side effect, one even he hadn't predicted. Well, just look at him. Does he really seem unaware of this? I think he just wanted to have some fun with a 10-on-10 baddie before he dies. Back to story. I thought the pain you'd feel upon my death would be the extent of it, he admitted. But apparently there's more to the spell than I knew. Blushing, the Dragon Queen realized what this meant. Dragons were bound by strict codes of monogamy, and the bond created by the blood curse would doom her future. After Leon's death, she would be unable to take another mate, bear offspring, or explain to the Dragon Clan what had happened. Leon was surprised by the unintended consequences of the spell. The irony wasn't lost on him. She had mocked him for not having a successor, but now, "You will also have no successor." Furious, she launched into the attack, but Leon stopped her, saying, "You don't need to do this. I'm going to die soon anyway." As his eyes began to close, he gave one final request, that the Dragon Queen live with hatred for him and feel pain for the rest of her life. This was his curse as a human, his parting revenge. Rosweise hesitated, holding back from delivering the final blow. Moments later, Leon breathed his last. She couldn't believe it. This mere human had taken his revenge in such a despicable way. But she wasn't about to let him have the last word so easily. Using her power, she marked Leon's chest with the emblem of the silver dragon. Leon Cosmode had once been a legend, a hero admired by all. At just 5 years old, he had killed a ferocious dog with his bare hands, an act that caught the attention of a passing dragon slayer. Recognizing the boy's potential, the dragon slayer decided to take him in as an apprentice. By the age of 10, Leon entered the prestigious Imperial Dragon Slayer Academy, and 4 years later he graduated as the youngest and most highly evaluated student in history. At just 15, he stepped onto the dragon-slaying battlefield, killing countless dragons and earning numerous military accolades for the Empire. His name spread across the land as the strongest dragon slayer, the Empire's only hope to lead them to victory and end the war. That was until he was captured and enslaved by the Dragon Clan. 2 years had passed since Leon was captured. Leon woke with a scream, his hand automatically reaching for his chest. Slowly, his breathing steadied as he began to calm down. Looking around, he found himself in an unfamiliar room. Confused, he wondered where he was, when suddenly, the door opened. A small girl entered, and Leon was struck by her innocence and beauty. He blinked, trying to understand what was happening. Rising from the bed, he gazed at the girl. Her presence so pure he thought she must be an angel. Surely he had died and ascended to heaven after his immense service to humanity. He asked her name. "What's your name?" Still in disbelief, the girl smiled sweetly and said, "Muen." Though her response made him feel strangely happy, something about her was odd. Her hair, black and white, which was strange for him. Muen mentioned that her mother told her the name meant the moon, which left Leon confused. Did angels even have mothers? Introducing himself, Leon was startled when the little girl excitedly responded that Leon meant lion. Surprised, he asked how she knew that. She smiled and said it was what her mother had told her. Feeling a sense of unease, Leon asked, "What's your mother's name?" "Rosweiss," Muen replied cheerfully. Leon froze. Hearing the name, he asked her in shock, "Am I your father?" Muen confirmed it with a joyful grin. Panic surged through him. It didn't take him long to realize this is his and Ross' child. Just then, Muen turned toward the door where her mother stood, sending a chill down Leon's spine. "Mama! Dad is awake!" Muen called out, running toward her. Rosweiss's lips curled into a smile. Muen assumed her mother must be happy to see him wake up as she had visited him every day. Rosweiss stroked her head with a wicked grin. She said, "Yes, I really love your dad." And she told her to go outside and play. "Your father and I need to talk." Once Muen left the room, Leon asked Rosweiss, "Is Muen really our daughter?" "Yes," she confirmed, closing the door behind her with her tail. "She's our biological child." Leon's mind raced. Why did you have the child?" he demanded. "Why did you save me?" Rosweiss revealed that Leon had been asleep for 2 years. She hadn't forgotten what he'd done to her, and she wasn't going to let it go. Leon's anger flared. "Do you think I want to do that?" "We're different. We can't coexist. I would have never touched you if things had been different." Seeing the torment in his eyes, Rosweiss's expression darkened. "Oh, it was torture for you, was it?" She wrapped her tail around his leg, pulling him onto the bed. Climbing on top of him, she ripped his shirt open and, with a cold gleam in her eyes, activated a spell. She intended to carve her dragon mark into him, binding him to her forever. Despite Leon's desperate pleas, Rosweiss placed her hand on his chest, and a glowing magic circle materialized. This mark would become his eternal shame. From that moment on, he would be her prisoner, bound to her forever, unable to escape, she said. "When your fellow humans will see the dragon tattoo on his body, they would believe he had betrayed them and surrendered to the Dragon Clan." Leon still couldn't understand why she was doing this. Revenge among the dragon race was a mystery for human scientists there. Revenge is an inhuman behavior that combines paranoia, extreme, and beyond human understanding. Rosweiss said it wasn't enough to defeat him, she wanted him to live in shame and suffer humiliation for the rest of his life. As the spell took hold, Leon began to feel an overwhelming desire he couldn't control for the Silver Dragon Queen. It was a great honor to make Leon the greatest dragon slayer in human history, a slave of the Dragon Clan and her closest partner. in a sense. Now that he was fully under the spell, she climbed on top of him and said, "Let's get this show on the road. If this keeps up, in few chapter, our protagonist will be looking like this at the Silver Dragon Castle." Even the maids noticed the queen was in an unusually good mood. Words spread quickly. The Dragon Queen's husband had finally awakened Leon. Overhearing this from a hidden corner was shocked. She had publicly declared him her husband. No one had idea just how terrifying she truly was. She had spent the entire day and night with him, and poor Leon's body was nearly broken. His waist felt as if it had been shattered. I would love that. The furious Leon swore he would not stay here to be her plaything. Stealthily he slipped out and made his way to the side door of the castle, but 4 dragon guards stood watch. Escape seemed impossible, but Leon felt something strange about the surroundings because there were fewer guards, and it was so quiet, which was completely different from when he came here 2 years ago. While Leon was figuring out how to avoid the guards, he stumbled upon a hidden hole in the grass. Silently, he approached it and saw a faint light coming from the other side, unsure if it was a trap. He decided not to dwell on it. He had to escape no matter what. Even if it was a trap, he would force his way through. Without hesitation, Leon began crawling through the narrow tunnel. He muttered a sarcastic farewell to the perverted Dragon Queen. And as for little Muon, though she was adorable, she would have to stay behind. For now, meanwhile, on the balcony, Moon to her mother excitedly announcing, "Father is digging a hole for the dog." The Dragon Queen, lounging in a bikini and sipping wine, chuckled at Leon's audacity. Moon eagerly asked, "When are you going to fish him back?" Ross Weiss scolded her gently, saying that fish was too rude. "Say catch him back instead," she corrected with a smirk. Moon bit, confused, nodded, and agreed. As night fell, Leon finally managed to escape the castle and darted into the nearby forest. He knew if he could climb the mountains ahead, he'd be able to see the border of human territory after running for hours. Leon felt confident that the Dragon Queen wouldn't be able to catch up to him, but to his dismay, the sky suddenly darkened, and we can see that Ross is in her true dragon form appeared above him, praising him for being such a fast runner. Seeing her, Leon curses his luck and started running, but Ross Weiss quickly landed in front of him, blocking his path. To his surprise, she wasn't angry. In fact, she seemed quite pleased. She said she helped him divert the guards and left the hole for him to escape. Although Leon knew it was a trap, he had no other choice. He hadn't expected her to catch up with him so quickly. What will happen if you return to human territory? Now marked with the Dragon Queen's seal on his chest, no one would recognize him as a dragon slayer, but Leon didn't care anymore. He was determined to start over as an ordinary man, believing it was far better than being tortured by her. Torture? Are you serious, bro? You guys were enemies for centuries, but still, there are plenty of guys who would want to switch places. Just look at this dude, and this one dude is calling it torture? Hell nah! Seeing his defiance, the Dragon Queen spread her wings. Furious that he didn't appreciate her kindness, she grabbed him with her claw, and together they soared toward human territory after 3 hours of flight. Night fell, and the Dragon Queen released Leon near the border city of the Empire, sending him tumbling through the trees before crashing headfirst onto the ground. Dazed Leon's headache vanished when he realized he was close to a human village. The Dragon Queen now, in her human form, confirmed they were indeed within. The human empire's borders were within sight, and for most, the sight of a familiar city brought hope, just one step away from returning to the human world. But for Leon, that hope felt unreachable. Suddenly, the mark on his chest began to glow. The Dragon Queen had neglected to mention an important detail. When one of the 2 bearers of the dragon mark desired intimacy, the mark would compel the other as she touched his chest. Leon felt an overwhelming heat and desire surging through him, impossible to resist. She had brought him here to demonstrate his shame, forcing him to confront it in front of his homeland. But Leon wasn't about to give up grabbing her arm. He decided to bide his time, patiently waiting for the right opportunity to strike back. He swore to repay her double for every humiliation she had inflicted on him. The Dragon Queen, surprised but amused, smiled and agreed to his challenge, saying she would wait for him dead or alive. As the moon rose, they walked to a tree near the Empire's border city, their fate connected by the mark. And their rivalry had lasted for several hours, filled with loud clapping and unpleasant noises, leaving the Dragon Queen more than satisfied. Meanwhile, Poor Leon was exhausted and quietly crying, drained of both energy and pride as she touched his chest. She casually decided that from now on she would bring him back every month to his hometown for more sessions. She was lost in her own thoughts, fantasizing about how to further wear down poor Leon, satisfied for the moment the Dragon Queen declared it was time to leave. After all, their daughter was waiting at home, but Leon, his spirit still somewhat intact, stopped her. He refused to be dragged back as her prey as a dragon slayer. He would walk on his own with what little dignity he had left. She raised an eyebrow, explaining that it would take 3 hours to fly back to the Silver Dragon Castle at her speed, while it would take a human like Leon 10 days, maybe even half a month to walk. Despite this, Leon stubbornly insisted on going on foot, asking her not to underestimate human endurance. Amused, the Dragon Queen smiled, intrigued to see how long he could hold out. After a while, Leon's steps became slower, his exhaustion clear. She silently followed him, waiting for him to admit he was too tired so she could scoop him up and fly. But Leon, though on the verge of collapsing, refused to admit defeat. Mocking him, she teased, "The only tough thing about you is your mouth." Just then they spotted several knights from the Dragon Slayer army patrolling nearby. Leon's heart leapt with hope. These men could help him escape her grasp, but the Dragon Queen quickly sensed his thoughts. Her aura turned deadly as she warned him with her eyes. If he called for help, she wouldn't hesitate to kill him. One of the knights approached, noticing their presence. "Are you lost?" he asked. Leon quickly replied, saying they were just out for a walk. Deep down, he couldn't bring himself to involve innocent people in his twisted situation. The knight got off his horse and introduced himself as the captain of the 47th Squadron of the Imperial Dragon Slayers. He mentioned that the jungle wasn't safe for a casual walk because of the dangerous animals and creatures. He kindly offered to escort them. Leon panicked, his hands shaking as he quickly thanked the captain, saying they knew some self-defense and could handle themselves. In truth, he didn't want the captain to get closer. The captain seemed to recognize Leon, which made the Dragon Queen tense. Her eyes narrowed, and she began to prepare her power to eliminate the captain if needed. Realizing the situation was getting out of hand, Leon acted fast. He grabbed the Dragon Queen's hand and pulled her close to his chest, telling the captain with a nervous smile that he had been mistaken for someone else. He joked that he had such a common face. Even his wife, the dragon, the queen herself, sometimes mistook him for someone else. Leaning in, Leon whispered urgently in her ear, begging her to play along. He promised that if she helped him get rid of the knights, he would obediently return with her. Amused, the Dragon Queen agreed. They both put on a convincing display of affection, with Leon holding her close in a mock show of love. The captain, clearly uncomfortable with the sudden outpouring of affection, smiled awkwardly and excused himself, no longer wanting to interrupt their romantic moment. As soon as the knights were out of sight, Leon released the Dragon Queen, who was visibly irritated. Realizing his mistake, he quickly stepped back. "You were smart, not to ask for help," she remarked coldly, "but let's get one thing straight. Just because we have a child together, that doesn't make me your wife." Leon, still catching his breath, responded, "I never intended to be your husband." The Dragon Queen smirked, satisfied with his answer. She turned to leave, reminding him they had a long journey ahead. But before they could set off, Leon suddenly felt a sharp pain in his hand, and moments later, he collapsed unconscious. Seeing this, the Dragon Queen sighed, amused by how fragile humans could be. Without hesitation, she transformed into her dragon form, gently picked Leon up in her mouth and tossed him onto her back. Taking his collapse as a silent plea for mercy, she spread her wings and flew toward the Silver Dragon Castle, pleased with how things had turned out the next day at Silver Dragon Castle. Leon woke up to find little Muin sitting beside his bed. Confused, he wondered how he had ended up back at the castle. Muin cheerfully explained that her mom had brought him back. It didn't take long for Leon to realize that he had finally been captured. Like prey, glancing at his hand, he noticed it was bandaged with a neat little bow tied around it. Muin proudly took his hand, explaining that she had done the bandaging herself, clearly hoping for praise. Leon smiled and gently stroked her head, realizing how different she was from what the dragonologist had said about her kind. Dragons were supposed to be fierce, raised in violence and blood from childhood. Yet, despite her dragon traits, Muin showed no hostility. She treated him with the warmth of a daughter, leaving him to wonder if this was because she was a human-dragon hybrid. He patted her head affectionately, telling her how amazing she was. "Muen, you're very cute," he said with a smile, then added teasingly, "but when you grow up, don't be like your mother." From the doorway, the Dragon Queen's voice cut in. "And what's wrong with being like me?" Leon froze, startled, realizing she had overheard him. Nervously, he tried to change the subject. Meanwhile, Muen eagerly showed her mother the bandaged hand, explaining that she had followed her mom's instructions perfectly. The Dragon Queen remained cold, offering no praise. "That's what you should do," she replied coldly. Muen simply nodded in understanding, used to her mother's strictness. Trying to lighten the mood, Leon patted Muen's head again. "Why don't you go in the garden?" he suggested. "I'll count to 100, and then I'll come find you." Muen's eyes lit up with excitement at the thought of playing hide-and-seek, and she ran off to hide. Leon glanced at the Dragon Queen, muttering to himself, "I'm definitely not like her mother." He then began to count as Muen disappeared into the garden. Once Muen left the room, Leon turned to the Dragon Queen and asked, "Why are you being so hard on her?" Sitting on the bed, she explained that all dragons were strict with their children from a young age to raise strong warriors. Leon argued that Muen wasn't entirely a dragon, and besides, she was very cute. The Dragon Queen scoffed, insisting that Muen was indeed a dragon and that cute was an insulting term for her kind. Leon, however, couldn't help but think the Dragon Queen herself was quite cute, but his comment only served to make her angry. She grabbed him by the shirt and reminded him that he was nothing more than a slave for her to vent her anger on. She warned him not to overstep his place or go ahead of her. Poor Leon looked visibly disheartened, but then she said to Leon, "It's good that you understand my position." Her mood seemed to lift slightly. After all, she was the Dragon Queen of the Silver Dragon clan, burdened with many governmental responsibilities. As a result, she entrusted him with the task of taking care of Muen. Leaning in close, she whispered in his ear that Muen liked him. Feeling overwhelmed, Leon struggled to respond. Leon walked to the fountain, his thoughts heavy with frustration. Caring for a child, especially as a dragon slayer, felt completely out of place. He wished there was some way to escape this responsibility. Wow, look at him. After smashing the Dragon Queen several times, now he wants to escape child support. Suddenly he spotted Muen hiding behind a pillar. He thought it was naive of her to believe she could hide there without being found. He pointed at her and declared, "I found you!" But she remained still, prompting him to wonder if she was upset. Leon apologized for making her wait, but he was confused by her unexpected action when she suddenly took off running. Leon chased after her, calling, "Why are you running?" Muen turned a corner, causing Leon to lose sight of her. Predicting the mood of a child was proving difficult. He no longer doubted why Rosweiss had entrusted him with the task of taking care of her. As he was searching for Muen, she suddenly appeared behind him and wrapped him in a hug, leaving him surprised and confused. He recalled that she had just run past him, but Muen said no, explaining that since her dad hadn't found her, she had gone out to look for him. Leon started to think that he must have seen things wrong. Muen took him by the hand, urging him to follow her as she had something special to show him. Just then, another girl who resembled Muen emerged from behind and watched them leave in silence. That day, as the fountains began to flow, Muen began shaking her head excitedly. She was painting and having the time of her life. Leon, sitting behind her, couldn't help but smile at the sight, a wave of tenderness washing over him. For the first time, the thought of having a daughter felt comforting. It seemed as though his soul had started to heal. While Muen enjoyed herself, Leon clenched his fists and gritted his teeth, deciding it was time to escape the Dragon Queen's grasp. Just then, Muen ran toward him, eager to show him a family drawing she had made. Leon extended his hand with a cheerful smile, ready to praise her, but as he examined the drawing, shock washed over him. Muen had depicted two girls. Initially, he thought it was a mistake due to her young age. Pointing to the second child in the drawing, he asked, "Why are there two children?" With a bright smile, Muen replied, "That's my sister." Hearing that Muen had an older sister, Leon panicked, his thoughts racing. It seems I didn't just hit one target with a single shot. I hit two instead, he thought nervously. It didn't take long for Leon to realize that the girl he had seen earlier was not an illusion. The child he had spotted in the garden must have been Muen's older sister. He regretted not calling her by name, which had likely made her feel upset. However, Muen believed her sister wasn't angry, just a little shy when she saw their dad. Leon rested his hand under his chin, reflecting on the fact that he had never met her before. It made sense that they were unfamiliar with each other. Leon cursed under his breath, blaming the Dragon Queen for hiding this child from him. Determined to uncover the truth, he decided to confront her. Meanwhile, in the Silver Dragon Castle, the Dragon Queen was in the library reading through some letters. A small messenger dragon arrived, carrying a new message. Just then, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the hall, catching her attention. She and the little dragon turned toward the door, watching intently. Moments later, Leon burst in, visibly furious, demanding her attention. As she calmly tucked the letter back into its envelope, the Dragon Queen asked, "Where is Muen? And what do you want?" Leon stepped up to the table and explained that he had been playing with Muen when he discovered that she had an older sister. He pressed her, saying, "You're really good at hiding things. When were you planning to tell me that I have an older daughter?" The Dragon Queen simply smiled in response, her expression unreadable. Somewhat puzzled by her reaction, Leon slammed his hand on the table with determination. He sarcastically thanked the Dragon Queen for her hard work, admitting he hadn't expected her to have two children. Mocking her, he added, "When I return to the Empire someday, I'll be sure to add your name to my family tree." However, Rosweiss remained calm, a faint smile gracing her lips. She asked him if he understood why she hadn't mentioned her older daughter before. Leon speculated that she might be jealous of his closeness with Muen, fearing that Noah would also grow attached to him. The Dragon Queen was somewhat taken aback by his eagerness to meet Noah. Unlike her, a cold and stern mother, Leon wanted to cultivate a good relationship with his daughter. With a soft smile, the Dragon Queen decided to grant his wish, but warned him to consider his choice carefully. Sometime later, Leon was in the kitchen, a smile stretching across his face as he chopped carrots. Today he was determined to show the Dragon Queen how things should be done. His first step in connecting with his eldest daughter was to win her over with a delicious meal. He set to work, preparing a hearty meat stew with cream, a dish he often made during his time with the team. Everyone who had tried it praised its exceptional taste, and its sweet flavor made it perfect for children. Using a spoon, Leon sampled the stew, savoring its rich taste. It was as good as he remembered. He hadn't forgotten how to cook. As Leon clenched his fist in determination, he imagined Noah's smile as she declared how much she loved the dishes her dad made. He believed that with this flavorful meal he could win her over. While he stirred the pot, two maids watched him curiously through the window. One of them couldn't help but feel excited. Leon had just recovered from a serious illness, and now, for the sake of his family, he had taken it upon himself to cook. To the maids, Leon was the epitome of a good husband, someone who genuinely cared for his home. Just then, the Dragon Queen entered the kitchen with her two daughters. Muen eagerly greeted the maids, her cheerful energy lighting up the room. The Dragon Queen, wanting to create a more relaxed atmosphere for dinner, ordered the maids to take a break. They bowed their heads respectfully and replied, "Understood," before leaving the room. As Leon finished preparing the food and set it on the table, he carried the steaming stew just as the Dragon Queen entered the dining area. Little Muen rushed toward him, drawn by the delicious aroma wafting through the air. With a smile, Leon said, "I heard you both enjoy meat, so I made a special stew and steak just for you." He hoped this meal would convey his affection to Noah. To his surprise, Noah seemed indifferent to the feast before her, her gaze wandering elsewhere. Leon was left stunned and confused by her lack of interest. The Dragon Queen smiled knowingly, and in that moment, Leon's frustration flared. He realized the Dragon Queen had anticipated this reaction, which explained her reluctance for him to meet Noah. It was their first meeting, and the Dragon Queen gently prompted Noah to introduce herself. Obediently, Noah replied, "I am Noah, the eldest daughter of the Silver Dragon Queen, Rosweiss," proudly noting that she was 1 year and 2 months old. Dragons were a long-lived race, and young dragons matured much faster than human children. Leon approached her, extending his hand in greeting. "I'm your dad," he introduced himself, hoping to make a good impression. To his surprise, Noah seemed mesmerized by him, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that her indifference was unsettling. He wondered why she appeared so distant and cold toward him. Noticing the awkward tension, Muen gently took Noah by the arm and whispered, urging her to engage in conversation so their dad wouldn't feel uncomfortable. But Noah's response stung Leon. "He seems very weak, and I'm not sure he's really our dad." Those words hit Leon like arrows, forcing him to confront the reality of his situation. It quickly became clear that he was facing his first crisis in his new role as Father Leon. He wiped his face with a cloth, reflecting on the harshness of the situation, convinced that his daughter might actually be trying to challenge him. The family gathered around the dining table in a grand room, the atmosphere heavy with silence and tension. Muen glanced at her twin sister, silently pleading for support. Leon couldn't help but notice how much the twins resembled each other, yet their personalities couldn't be more different. Noah clearly inherited her mother's strong-willed nature, while Muen's gentle and kind, more like a human child. Watching both of them enjoying the meal he had prepared, Leon smiled and asked Noah if she liked the food. However, his happiness was crushed in an instant when she responded coldly, "Disgusting." As Leon's heart broke at Noah's icy, "disgusting," Roswitha burst into laughter, unable to contain herself. She covered her mouth with her hand, but her amusement shone through, filling the room with unexpected levity. Muen, intrigued by her mother's rare display of joy, tilted her head and asked curiously, "Why are you so happy, Mama?" Leon, recovering from his initial disappointment, forced a smile and joined in the laughter, masking his inner frustration. He expressed how much it meant to him to share this family moment, his voice tinged with a blend of pride and exhaustion. Bright-eyed, Muen eagerly asked if their father would now join them for dinner every day. Her hopeful expression warmed the room, but the warmth didn't last long. Noah, wearing a stern expression, immediately rejected the idea. "No," she said firmly, her tone final. Muen's face fell as she turned to her sister, clearly confused. "Why not?" she asked, her small voice carrying the weight of disappointment. Roswitha, ever calm and composed, shifted the subject, her gaze settling on Noah. "Why are you in such a rush to join the academy?" she asked. The academy was prestigious, renowned for training dragon elites, but Ross's question carried an undertone of curiosity and caution. Noah's confident reply cut through the tension. "I want to defeat dragon slayers," she declared. Leon, still holding onto his spoon, froze at her words. The fire in her voice reminded him of Roswitha in battle, strong-willed and unrelenting. He shook his head, concern etched into his face. "It's dangerous, Noah. Battling Dragon Slayer isn't something to take lightly, especially at your age," he warned, trying to temper her enthusiasm. Noah, unimpressed, crossed her arms and raised an eyebrow at him. "I'm not a child," she retorted sharply, her tone carrying the weight of both defiance and maturity beyond her years. Roswitha, always the strategist, backed Noah. "Starting early will prepare her for what lies ahead," she said coolly, her words leaving little room for debate. Turning her sharp gaze to Leon, she asked pointedly, "Do you have a reason to stop her?" Leon clenched his jaw, realizing that opposing Noah's ambition would only drive a deeper wedge between them. He sighed. "No," he admitted reluctantly. "If this is what she wants." His words trailed off, but the frustration in his voice was palpable. Roswitha smirked, her eyes gleaming as if she had orchestrated the entire conversation. "Good," she said, her tone laced with subtle triumph. "Decisions about her future need to be made swiftly." Leon felt a chill run down his spine, knowing that Ross's cunning intellect was once again steering the ship. She informed Noah that the Academy's entrance exam was in a month and announced that Leon would personally train her until then. Noah's face lit up with excitement, her earlier coldness momentarily replaced by genuine anticipation. Roswitha turned to leave, but Leon quickly pointed at the dishes on the table. "After dinner, couples should always wash dishes together," he said with a slight smirk. Leaning toward her, he added, It's the right way to end a family dinner, even if it's all just a fake act in front of the kids. His tone was half serious, half teasing as he clearly awaited her response. After seeing the excitement on Muen's face, Ross calmly agreed. Upon hearing this, Muen's face lit up, and she also wanted to help them. However, she suddenly found herself being pulled away by Noah, who was giving Mom and Dad their personal space. That's it for today's video. Make sure to subscribe and like. Bye.